Hey there everyone, how y'all doing? Well, I hope. Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new, welcome, I'm glad you're here. I'm going to go ahead and continue on with this connecting the cards so you can connect with your cards series I'm doing for tarot cards. Um, and this time we're going to kind of get a little bit more into, I guess, practicing with the tarot cards. And before we get into everything I want to talk about today, let's just do a quick little recap about what we talked about in part one. And basically, what we talked about in part one was discussing giving yourself permission to practice using the tarot cards on your own without necessarily always having to be reading the tarot cards. Talked a little bit about a method of doing that, and actually, I'm going to probably get into that a little bit more today. We talked about a practice of taking the major arcana cards and laying them out in order from the Magician to Judgment in either 2 rows of 10 or 4 rows of 5, and then following along with the Fool card as it makes its journey through the major arcana, and then looking at those major arcana cards as well, and kind of following along with what those images are trying to convey and how they progress through those whole card or that entire section of cards 1 through 20. Then we decided to then we laid out the minor arcana cards from the ace to the 10, and we did those in ace through 10 and all 4. We touched a little bit on the elements and the maybe I guess kind of body placement. So wands are fire, cups are water, swords are air, and pentacles are earth. We discussed that the cups and pentacles are the softer suits and more feminine, and that the swords and wands are the more masculine suits. We also touched a little bit on the numerology that's kind of associated with the tarot cards. We didn't get into that too much. However, as we did have the minor arcana all laid out, we did look at the similarities as the cards progressed in each suit. So we did kind of touch on how the 4s are sort of like stability and maybe rest, with the 4 of swords and maybe the 4 of pentacles as good examples. I think we touched on maybe it was the 7s. I can't quite remember offhand, and I never took notes. I just started making that video. So, and then we did touch a little bit on starting to actually just work with the cards and how to do that. And that is where making sure you give yourself permission to practice and not always feel like you have to be doing a reading while you practice with the cards, because you have to get familiar with the cards, right? You have to connect the cards up so you can connect with your cards. In order to do that, you have to practice. So, unless you have a line of people coming for you to always be doing tarot readings while you're still learning, you're going to have to just practice on your own and work, and not necessarily always have to have a question or something like that in mind. And I'm going to cover a little bit of how I go about doing that, and maybe that's just going to be a good practice pro tip for you guys, especially if you're new or whatnot. So that's what we're going to get into today, now that we've covered what last time was. But first, before we do that, I have a few things I want to kind of cover or talk about. The first one is actually a question for anybody watching, and that question is basically one I want you to think about quite a bit, maybe, or just consider, especially maybe during this video as I'm having this little chit chat with you guys. And that question is how serious are you about learning tarot? And how much time are you willing to dedicate to learning tarot? So I want you to think about that. Also, I do want to touch on a couple of other things real fast, because now we're getting into maybe actually practicing with the cards, mixing them up, pulling cards, looking at them, trying to figure out meanings, things like that, asking the cards questions, of course. And that is just 2 things real quick, all right? So the first thing is there's really no right or wrong way to read tarot cards. Okay, as long, in my opinion, as long as there are two sort of considerations you follow. The one is that you need to actually understand that tarot itself, whether it be Rider Waite, Marseille, Thoth, it's a system. It's a system with some structure, and you really should have at least a fundamental understanding of that system and the structure of that system, as well as the upright meanings of all 78 cards. Now, you can do keywords to help you get a fairly okay fundamental knowledge of the 78 cards. You can, do a practice where you just look at them and journal your feelings about the cards and kind of compare notes to, say, a tarot card book with the meanings in them, or the little white book, and take notes on that. You can make flashcards, but, these are kind of already flashcards anyway. So I don't really think you need to make flashcards for tarot cards. You can if you want, but keywords, doing your own thing, journaling, writing out the way you feel is probably a good practice. Looking at a card, taking like a note of like maybe four things you feel or think about, and then comparing what you got to like the little white book that came with the deck is also a pretty good practice. But you got to get the cards moving. You got to start throwing the cards around. You got to start just going. And the second thing is that tarot is not to cause harm, right? Under no circumstances should it be harmful. Should it try to cause harm? Should you do anything like that? Golden rule type of thing, right? Do no harm. And if tarot starts to become something that is harmful to your life because of reasons, maybe decision paralysis or something like that, and get your focus on things to get yourself in a proper frame of mind in order to come back to these and use these in a way that won't cause harm. All right, so with those things out of the way, we can go ahead and kind of get into just kind of starting to, I guess, practice with the tarot cards. I'm not quite centered in here in my hair. Okay, let's try that. Is that better? No, not really. Is that better? This camera's at this funny angle, so. I guess that'll work. All right. Anyway, enough of that. So now that I lost my train of thought completely, practicing with the cards, we're going to get into doing some of that stuff and learning the tarot. First of all, though, I just want to I want to bring up before, I guess, another thing, and one more thing, right? This is the big thing when it comes to practicing with tarot cards, and this is actually a very important, I guess, thing you should understand about reading tarot, practicing tarot, learning tarot, okay? This right here is a this right here is a mechanism for instant gratification. Okay? Tarot cards are not that. Oh, wow. I just kind of fanned out to the devil card right there, which actually is a little bit relevant to kind of what I'm talking about now that I'm sort of thinking about it. What I'm trying to say is there's, due to the way these work, due to the way the internet works, the way the algorithm picks up and sells your data and collects your data and tries to keep your eyes glued to this and gives you those instant dopamine hits when the phone goes off and the notifications happen. I mean, that's the way it's designed. That's the way social media is designed. That's the way the internet is designed now. Back when I was getting into tarot back in like 1995, we didn't have these. You know, we were just, it was just the start of like the internet having, or the internet being in people's homes. You know, there wasn't such a like mental tie into your life or whatever being existing in this. Okay, um, granted, it made learning how to read tarot cards a lot harder. You know, I had to do book study and find, you know, anything I could about it. Um, at the bookstores, there wasn't a whole lot in the realm of the internet at that point that I was able to find as a teenager, but I wasn't really looking anyway. I digress a little bit. Um, this is an older, this is older. This is an older thing than this is, okay? This has worked for hundreds of thousands of years before the smartphone came along. In fact, I think, who was it, Joe Monteleone, right? Did I say his name right? I think he said something about tarot cards, at least the major arcana, being like the 78 memes of the universe or something, and that's actually kind of the way you should look at it. In order to learn tarot and in order to practice tarot, you have to make the decision to put this down and pick this up and just start working with it. Like I said in that last video, once you had those cards out, once you've looked through them, once you've kind of gotten an idea of how they progress through the major arcanas and the minor arcanas, and you pick them all back up and you get them going and shuffled, you know, then you need to work with the cards. And I mean, the only way you can work with the cards is to pick the cards up and start working with them. So when you are, you know, just sitting there, turning on like whatever, Netflix or Hulu, and you start just having some show on, instead of grabbing your phone and doom scrolling and just listening, put your phone down, pick up your tarot cards, and start shuffling them. Okay? The reason I said that the devil card is kind of appropriate for this is because we all choose to keep our eyes and everything like glued to this. We choose to pay attention to this more than, you know, we make those choices, right? Granted, not everybody is so locked into their phones, but I mean, there's been at least a couple generations that have gotten a phone put right in their face as soon as they could crawl, and that breaking that connection to that device is going to be a challenge. It's going to be hard, and that's where this, I think, comes in, right? You got to kind of break those chains. You can move away as soon as you want, but you have to make the choice to do that and not be held to those chains. So with that all out of the way, let's go ahead and, I guess, cover a couple of things as far as practicing. First thing I would say to do for your practice is you got to start with spreads, right? You got to shuffle and you got to start with spreads. So there's a couple different ways to shuffle. We can cover those real quick, I guess. Let me do a top-down thing here. Of course, there's the classic, what's this called? Like an overhand shuffle with a bridge. So every other card gets flipped, right? And then you bend them up and they do that. There's also the, or that's not an overhand. This is an overhand shuffle, right? You just grab some from the back, and then you just let them slowly release the tension on your fingers, and you just let them slide in like this. Let me go front ways for that one. So that is what a overhand shuffle is, right? This, right? Just pick up from the back, and just let them fall, and then overlap them, let them fall again. I'm kind of doing it one at a time because you have to release the tension on your fingers and your thumb to let the cards fall out. So that would be how you would do an overhand shuffle. And I just showed you the what is that called? I always wanted to call it just a bridge shuffle, a riffle and a bridge, I guess. A riffle, shuffle, and a bridge. So there's that, like I just showed. And then the overhand, You can do, I guess they call it like a washing machine shuffle, where you basically just take them out and you fan them around and you mix them up like this, and then you pull cards as you feel kind of compelled to do that. And then there's a kind of a cut shuffle, I guess you could call it. Let me get these back in some sort of order here. All right. And the cut shuffle would be where you just kind of, I don't know if I can do this very easily on camera, but you just kind of like pull these out, and you just kind of, you know, do something like that, or you can pull them out from the center. This is gonna be hard to do on camera, but I'll try. It's kind of like pull them out from the center, and then you just stack them on top, right? Just pull them out from the center, stack them on top, which is pretty much the same thing as just taking them and, you know, doing a card cut, or doing, you know, like a multiple card cut, and then mixing up how you put them back together. Now, you can do a combination of all of those if you want. There's probably a few more ways to shuffle. Those were just the few simplest ones that kind of came to mind. You just want to make sure that they don't go flying all over the place as you're trying to mix them up, right? So pick a way to shuffle them. Generally, the way I do it, if you've seen any of my other tarot card reading, I guess, videos, is I tend to do a couple of the riffle bridges, and then a couple of like these, and then a riffle bridge, and then a couple more of those overhands. Maybe like another riffle as I'm just kind of talking and jibber jabbering with doing the reading. And you want to do that anyway, at least in my opinion. You want to start having conversations with the tarot cards, right? Because that's what it is. When you're doing a tarot card reading for somebody, I mean, it's a conversation, right? You're talking to the client, they're telling you what their problem is, right? You're shuffling the cards as you're having this conversation. You know, maybe you're working out like how you want to like approach asking the question and everything like that. And then, you know, you can do a couple of things. You can cut the deck yourself. You can just break them in half, right? Put the bottom on the top. You can have the client do it. You can, that is your preference. Some people don't like their tarot cards touched. Some people prefer the client like shuffle them 3 times or cut them or something like that to kind of put their energy into it. But if you're just practicing, just pick a couple ways to shuffle, right? And just do that. Make sure the cards get mixed up. And then depending on how comfortable you feel with how you what you understand as far as the cards go, I would say start just with one card. Just mix them up and flip the card over. Don't worry about it being in reverse. Just flip it over and put it upright. And then just look at it. Would you look at it, right? And just see what comes to mind. Okay? 6 of Pentacles, right? If you remember from what we talked about in the last lesson, Pentacles are earth and material things, right? If you have a keyword association for a 6, you know, tie that into it. But before you start doing that, you just need to kind of look at the card. If you look at the card and you instantly remember something you associate with it, then that's fine. By all means, use that association. But just spend a couple minutes just looking at the card, okay? Once you kind of run out of like ideas for the card, we can say, you can either flip another card and put it on top and look at that card and kind of go through that same process, right? Whatever you know, whatever this image is showing you, right? It's a Queen of Swords. If you have a keyword for queen, which could be like helping or patience, think of that. If you know swords are air and thoughts, then maybe, you know, kind of stick that in there and then start going, okay, so she's either patient or helpful with something that you're thinking about. She could be a person that does the that is energetically like this, or it could be the energy of this card, right, that you might want to kind of just think about. Um, and just look at it, right? I mean, just observe what is in the card. Observe the sword, observe her handout. Invite, maybe it's an inviting hand. She's saying you can come along, but look, I have a sword here, so if you act up, I'm going to, use my sword. You can do it like this, okay? Now remember, you're just mixing cards up and you're just laying them down. You're doing this here, okay? Instead of this here, right? So I just flipped the death card over. Well, I'm just practicing, right? I don't really have anything in mind. So, I'm just observing. I'm just thinking about what I'm getting from the image. I'm associating a keyword with it, possibly the number assignment it is, maybe. Um, you know, and that's it. So you can do that. You can go through that for as long as you want. You can just do it, until your brain is kind of over this method of doing it. You can go through all the cards. You want to separate the major arcana from the minor arcana and just have two separate packs and just go through the major arcana first and then the minors. You certainly are allowed to do that. Remember, there's really no right or wrong way to do this. I'm just offering some suggestions and some ideas that might help get you going so you can start your tarot journey. Excuse me. It's been cold and dry around here, so uh, throat's really dry. The next thing you can do if you get tired of the single kind of card flip and just kind of look at it, if you're getting bored with that, you can take your cards. Of course, mix them up again, right? Whatever method you want. Don't worry about flyaways. I mean, you can if you want, but I wouldn't worry about flyaways because you need to get practicing moving the cards around in your hands, right? Mix them up, and then draw 3 cards and lay them down all together. Okay? Again, do not worry about reversals. If you're this new to doing this, you need to have a real fundamental understanding of the upright cards before you start getting into reversals. And I have some ideas that I'm going to cover as far as understanding and using reversals and all that for a different video. But in the meantime, just take your cards, lay them out 3 at a time. Then just what I call this is I kind of call this the the Jeopardy reading, okay? And the reason I say that is because what I kind of like to do is I like to look at all 3 of these cards and consider all 3 of these cards as an answer to a question. And then I get to make up the question to kind of like not necessarily like fit the cards, but it is kind of like that, right? Because that kind of helps you start thinking through sort of pattern recognition and some of that stuff. You have Justice, the Hangman, and the 4 of Cups. So what would that necessarily what does that say to you if these are all together? How does that what do you pick up without really knowing a whole lot of additional like deeper esoteric meanings? Okay, Justice is maybe looking for truth. The Hangman could be knowing that there's some truth to something that you've maybe lost, right? Maybe with this 4 of Cups, you're too focused on here, right? And not what's being given to you, and you're perfectly happy staying that way. It really depends, like what you come up with for how this works. Okay, again, you can go, okay, Justice, the Hangman, those are 2 major arcanas, so that is, these are like ones you need to pay attention to. What's the visual kind of stuff? There's a tree here. Is this a situation where somebody is trying to bring some sort of truth to a situation that nobody wants to deal with. Like this person maybe, or somebody um, knows there's some issue or know there's something going on, but they choose to ignore it, even though maybe they caused it. And this person is so upset about whatever the situation is, they're not looking at the possibility of um, being handed, an opportunity to, I guess, move on from it. So you just kind of have to come up with some of these like little stories, and like these kind of, like I said, like this is the answer, but what is the question, right? Think about it like, okay, if this was what did my, like as an example, what was my job interview? Like what are the prospects of this job interview I had? Well, you know, how would this be the answer to that question? And you can just keep doing that. You can just keep taking cards, and so you can just keep throwing them down in orders of three, and you can try to figure out what the answer is, and then formulate a couple questions about the answer. Okay, a little bit of like a reverse thing to do. So you could look at, strength. That's another major page. That could be a person. That could be somebody learning something or something about learning. Maybe you need some strength to learn some. Maybe you need some strength to go through some sort of emotional learning so you can better yourself later. That's just the simplest practice that there is. Just exactly that. Hey, look what that we got here. The devil card again. And this guy. So I'll just leave this here, and this might maybe help you guys think it through a little bit without the commitment of having to grab your whole deck and shuffle and everything. So just think of what the answer is for this, and then maybe think of one or two like questions that you might associate to this answer. Or just go, okay, so if this was a relationship question, what does this say? If this was a job question, what does this say? You can do it that way as well if you're having trouble coming up with your own like sort of question scenarios. So that's a good way to practice with getting familiar with some of like the way the cards flow and connect and everything like that. The next thing that we would talk about would be actual like spreads and like positional values, because you can't really do, you can do like an open sort of style reading, which is sort of what I was just kind of covering, but it's more like a practice. This is just practicing getting familiar with the cards, how they can kind of tell a story one next to each other, et cetera, et cetera. As far as spreads go, and I'm seeing that this is already about a 30-minute long video, so let me see if I can tackle spreads maybe real quick, and then if I have to, maybe I'll make another video covering spreads, a little bit more of a deeper dive. But once you kind of get into that rhythm of just mixing up the cards, getting them moving, laying them out, and seeing what they're telling you as like an answer, okay, then you can start getting a little bit more into spreads. And I would suggest that if you're just starting out, that you either stick with a 1 or 3 card spread. A 1 card spread is a little bit more of a, I don't necessarily want to say an instantaneous answer, but, if you had just 1 card, you can still get a lot of information about the question from just 1 card, okay? So if you were doing a 1 card spread, and you can do this, the 1 card is the answer, then you formulate the question. But I think with the 1 card spread, you can just kind of play pretend, right? And you can do it however you want. You can just say, all right, we're going to go model along with the scenario of a client wants to know, like, whatever. My cousin wants to know, like, what the potential outcome of their job interview was, right? I would avoid, especially if you're doing this, avoid yes or no questions. You got 78 cards in here. Yes or no is only two answers. Don't just throw a card down and answer like to a question of like, oh, did I get the job? These are more like what, why, hows. So if it's like a job question, the question would be more like, what is the potential outcome of the job interview? How would I be seen um, at this career fair or whatever? Okay, some type of question like that. For sake of argument, for this, we're just going to do um, what is the potential like what's the potential outcome of a job interview? Okay, I already shuffled the cards. I guess I can cut them real quick, and then you just lay the card out. And I mean, you got the Emperor here, which is actually kind of interesting. That's a fairly that's kind of a bossy card, honestly. You know, it might, you know, and that's dependent on how you want to read that, right? Maybe you could look at this as like, well, the potential is that it's going to be a stable job. The potential job could be that you're going to have a lot of structure and rigidity with this job. You know, based on this Emperor card, it might be a boss that you're going to, you know, is going to be real kind of like Emperor energy. The job could have a high standard being held to it. That's that's it. Just small things like that. You know, how did you know simple questions, one card, simple answer, right? Then maybe you can ask the same question, right? Or you can just flip the card over and go, okay, so if it was this card for that question, this means that maybe like I put a lot of work into, you've put a lot of work into your you've put a lot of work into coming this far with this to this job and to this interview, and your work, right? Well, maybe this isn't really showing you like if your work is going to pay off. So pick another card. Well, I mean, what would the Six of Swords mean? Like your seven is like you're working hard at getting this, but you're going to be turned away, or you're going to end up actually going in maybe a different direction, or your thoughts might betray you, and make you think that this job isn't going to be good enough for you, um, right? But you gotta keep doing this. You gotta keep working through this. You gotta keep um, having that. So that would be like a one card position. You just look at the card and you get as much information from that card based on the keywords and whatever meanings you have with it. Um, and you can take a second, right? You can look at the card. It can take a minute, right? That's why earlier I was saying when you're just like idly watching TV, right? First start just by flipping a card over and looking at the card, because you're going to be looking at the cards a lot as you read tarot, and you're going to be thinking over what the cards are in the spread or however they're working, as well as with the question. So, you might sit there with your client looking at this card spread and take 3, 4 minutes before you even say something. And that's fine. Sometimes things might come right away, and that's also fine. Um, Sometimes you might just have to do like a free word association as you're pulling the cards, and then slowly start to make kind of like an answer or get the insight that you're looking for after you do that. Now, the other card spread would be a 3 card spread. And I would actually do either strengths, weaknesses, or possibilities. Or I don't, past, present, and future works, but I don't like using just one card for like the past. I think that's more like a something from your past that is either going to help you or maybe hurt you. Something you're looking at in the present, and something coming your way in the future. Um, but strengths, weaknesses, and possibilities is also a pretty good one. That actually kind of covers a lot more like um, versatility. So if we were doing a question again as say like um, the job, right? So how do you say the question is, how do you think I'm going to perform at this job interview? You mix up the cards. And now remember, we have positions. You have to keep these positions in mind to get a very clear answer. Up until now, we've just been kind of laying the cards down, finding the stories, and then finding the stories and the answers and creating the question. Now we're flipping it around and we're working with the question and then finding the answers in the card. So the job interview question again, this is just for demonstration. That's funny. I pulled the justice card. Anyways, yeah, let me do this real quick. Let me just do one quick riffle shuffle here, and then we'll try this again. And again, as you riffle shuffle and stuff, you're talking with the client, you're maybe having this question yourself, you would be like, okay, how is the prospect of, what is the, I'm having trouble formulating this question on the fly here, but what is the potential, what is the job interview I'm having in 3 weeks looks like? Am I going to be like ready for the job interview? What do I need to know about this job interview? A question like that. And we're doing strengths, weaknesses, and like potential outcomes or possibilities, I guess. Okay. And if we were looking at this with strengths, weaknesses, and potential outcomes, and it was about how did this job interview, or what's the outlook of this job interview, or whatever it was. And we have the 8 of Cups and strengths. So, that's somebody turning their back on these cups, right? They're moving away. They're moving somewhere into the darkness. They're kind of advancing. They're turning their backs on some things that maybe no longer serves them. Then you have the 6 of Cups. So this is, kind of like a bit of nostalgia, looking back, a little bit more like family and, some of that. It's a fairly happy, positive card. And then we have this 5 of Wands, which is, of course, there's like a struggle, right? There's something happening, right? It's struggle. And then you look at these and you see that there's cups, right? 2 cups and 1 wand. So we have 2 waters and a fire. So if you remember the old school toy battle beasts, you would know that probably water is going to put out the fire, right? So you're probably going to look at this and say, okay, your strengths with this career move or job interview is that you are going to be able to advance through it. It might be a little bit emotionally draining to prepare for it. But you can advance with this job interview. The 6 could be that the weakness is maybe you're looking too much. Maybe the problem is you have too much of an emotional tie to this job interview. And maybe that's your weakness. Maybe your strength, right? Again, this is kind of your answers, right? Strengths, 8s. 8s are kind of advancement. That's a keyword I use. You have 8 of Cups. He's advancing away. He's moving away from something. You have the 6. 6s are kind of like perseverance or kind of moving through something, looking back. I see this as kind of a nostalgic card. I also see it as like making kind of new friends, going out, reaching out. So maybe this is you're done with this one job. You don't have any more emotional ties. So you have this strength that you can walk away from what you got going on. Your weakness is maybe that you're having a hard time adjusting to the change. Maybe this is you're having a hard time leaving your old job, and maybe that's your weakness. Maybe your strength is you're going to have to do that. Your weakness is you're going to have a hard time looking at your previous job, or maybe it's you're going to have to actually go out and maybe you're getting a job. Maybe you were stay at home for a long time or work from home, and now you have to leave that aspect of your life that you have liked and enjoyed for a whole lot, and go through some changes as far as your career goes. That would be a little bit of a way to do a strengths, weaknesses, possibilities. Now, if this doesn't make sense, and I kind of struggled through that because I'm trying to talk on camera, I'm trying to give an example, I'm trying to sort of do a reading and everything, and I'm not really that comfortable with all of that. But if this doesn't make sense to you and everything, then don't force it for long, okay? Don't overthink this. This is all practice, remember, okay? If this starts to if this stuff starts to feel forced, if this stuff starts to feel forced, it's not going to be a good reading. It's not going to be a good answer. And I actually should probably use that lesson on myself for this last example. So the thing would be is if it's not making sense, if you do that and the cards you pull after you look at them for a few minutes, they're just not really making sense for how is this a strength, how is this a weakness, how is this a possibility or a potential outcome, then just pull more cards, guys. Just do it again. Strength, weakness, potential outcome. That might make a little more sense for a job interview question, right? A strength is maybe you take opportunities. Maybe this is an opportunity that fell in your lap and you're looking to take it. Maybe the weakness is that you might be juggling too much in your life right now to do what the new job is going to demand from you. And the potential outcome is, you're going to really have to pause and really think through if this job is going to still allow you to juggle life the way you currently are. That would be it. That would be the two spreads that I would suggest you practice with, you work on doing. I would sit there and maybe do about however long you feel. If you're sitting down for a couple hours just idly watching TV, pick these up instead of picking these up. Instead of picking this up. It's going to be a challenge. You might not be able to just keep this put down the entire time because it's what we're wired for at this point in time, unfortunately. So take 20 minutes, shuffle cards, pull them, put them down, spend 20 minutes on this, pick up the cards, however you want to do it. I'm just offering some advice, some tips and practice techniques so you can connect with your cards. But looping back, this is why I asked that question in the beginning about how serious you are about learning the tarot and how much time do you want to dedicate to doing it. Because that is the kind of linchpin on how good you will be at understanding the cards and how easy it will be for you to go on this journey and learn the cards. Okay, with that, I think 45 minutes is about good. This is probably one of the longest videos I've ever done. So I hope you found some insight and some information that will help you with your tarot journey in this. If you found this at all helpful, informative, otherwise entertaining, consider leaving it a like and subscribing to the channel if you want to see more of this stuff. And if you have any questions or suggestions, leave a comment down below. And until next time, take care of yourselves, everybody.